And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's edition of the Whitfield Report. I am your host, Sam Whitfield, broadcasting live from NGC TV studios here in South Florida. And I want to thank you so much for tuning into this very special edition of the Whitfield Report. Tonight I have a very special guest. This is an interview that I've been promoting like crazy all week long. And if you're a Patreon subscriber of mine, some of you will have seen this interview already. And for those of you who have, I appreciate the support on Patreon. Anyway, my guest tonight is the one and only John Neri. Now, for those of you who don't know, John Neri is an up-and-coming YouTube star. I have a feeling he's going to be a big YouTube star here in the next few years. He's an entrepreneur from Syracuse, New York. Very funny guy. Very well-spoken gentleman, very humble gentleman actually, but he has a sense of humor, and he's a, what can I say, he's your New York Italian guy, what can I say, and I just love him. John's a fantastic guy, and we've been planning on having him on the show for a while. He's an entrepreneur, and he's the host of a very successful YouTube show called NeeTV, which airs every weekday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on youtube.com/John Neri, CNY. And he's just an awesome guy. He's really insightful, and I did this interview with John on Tuesday. What you're about to see, I pre-recorded it on Tuesday, and I honestly think it was one of the best interviews I've done in quite a while. We just talked about politics and life, and we made a couple jokes with each other, and just had a good time all around, and so I'm really glad that you guys could tune in to watch this interview. But before we get to that, I do have a couple quick announcements. For those of you who have been supporting me on Patreon, I want to thank you so very much for doing so. A few of you have been asking me about Patreon and how you can support the show, and the easiest way to do that is to, of course, go to patreon.com/Whitfield and sign up and become a patron. Some of you on Twitter have been tweeting at me lately and saying that you would like to support me, but you don't want to do it through Patreon. And folks, I am looking into Patreon alternatives. I know that you can do a PayPal account, but I'm looking into the logistics of that. I'm not fully sure yet that I want to go with PayPal. Yeah, although that is a strong possibility. I could be doing some premium content on Minds or Gab. I'm not sure which yet, but for now, I certainly am going to continue posting exclusive content on Patreon, and that would be the easiest way to get in touch with me for that premium content and those additional podcasts that I post over there throughout the week, or that I will be doing soon. And I'm honestly not too worried about getting banned yet from Patreon. I'm not worried at all. A lot of the conservatives who are being threatened with being banned from Patreon, well, I mean, they admit themselves that they're doing some pretty controversial stuff, and I'm not quite worried about that myself yet. So, it's not a huge issue yet, and I wouldn't worry about it. But without further ado, I have a great interview for you with John Neri of NeeTV, and you can follow him on Twitter at John Neri CNY, and you can subscribe to his channel on YouTube by searching John Neri in the search box. And he's an all-around great guy. So without further ado, here's my interview with the great and powerful John Neri. Enjoy, folks. And we're live, and this has been long in the making. Mr. John Neri, how are you, sir?
Good. Just picked my nose to start off this podcast.
Well, that's what all the professionals do.
Couldn't help it. Must have been a nervous tick or something. How are you, Sam?
I'm doing good, Mr. Nisha.
You doing good or you doing well?
I'm doing well. However that goes, I'm not a grammar Nazi.
Well, you're the one in college, not me. You should know these things better than me.
Yeah, well, I did pass college English with like a B, but it was because my political views didn't quite match up with the assignments in that class. So
how are you getting politics in grammar?
Because we have leftover flower children from the 60s who, think that they're gods or something like that, and who think that they're, they think that politics and English are somehow intermingled or something like that.
Yeah, but it's grammar. Like, grammar's supposed to be pretty black and white.
Yeah, but, now you'll get points docked off if you use, like, the term fire. If you use the term like fireman or policeman, because
oh my goodness, that's bullcrap.
Yeah, I even tried arguing against that crap, and but that this is what happens when the communists take things, when they take academia over and when they take pop culture over. Speaking of pop culture and whatnot, sir, you have one of the best internet live stream shows.
No, don't butter me up. I can't even stream on my Anchor that well. I forgot to hit the live this morning. I did my show. I had it sitting right next to me, and I forgot to record it. But thank you very much. I do appreciate that.
Well, what you can always do with Anchor, what I always do is I always download the YouTube streams afterwards, and then upload them into convert them to MP3 files and then re-upload them.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I should definitely do that. I need the hard drive space.
Not to well, and then I delete the files on my computer afterwards.
Once you upload them, yeah, it's smart. Smart. That's why you're the podcast bear, or whatever, or Sam, the podcaster. I don't know if you're still a podcast bear or what it is, but you're doing a great job.
Well,
doing a great job, Sam.
Thanks. Well, this whole drama with the Unbearables. I mean, this isn't the main reason why I wanted to invite you on, but it is one of the reasons.
Well, we had the schedule, I think, before that even happened. Did we not? Or maybe it happened after. I don't remember. But
I think it happened like right after that whole.
But we were talking about it. We were talking about doing an interview like before that. We just didn't schedule it until just after.
Yeah. We had been talking about it beforehand, and then everything kind of went down that whole rabbit hole, and people were asking me like, "Are you still going to have John on your show?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why wouldn't I?" And
well, they don't want you getting caught in the crossfire. That's all it is, which is silly. The whole thing's dumb. I don't know what you want me to say about it. Basically, I made some jokes, and then people took it personally. And then I reacted to one person, then I reacted to a couple others, and it started World War Unbearables.
Yeah.
Let me say, I made a series of jokes, that I could go back today and watch him, and I think it would still be funny. And then I counterpunched, and maybe I counterpunched a little too hard, and I divided a bunch of people unintentionally. And I still want Owen to do well. I want everybody to do well that associates as a Bear. I just, I honestly, Sam, I don't want to spend much time talking about it. I've said what I've had to say, and
sure, yeah.
I think I'm good, unless you have a specific question.
Well, all I will say about it, and this isn't really in your defense. This, in my opinion, is just plain fact. I mean, I'm from Colorado. I'm out west, but I mean, I've been to New York several times within my life, and you're a native New Yorker, correct?
Yeah, but I'm from Syracuse, New York. I'm like 5 to 6 hour drive away from New York City.
Okay.
So yeah, just because I'm a New Yorker doesn't mean I'm a New York City, New York. Actually, I'm from the Salt. Syracuse is known as the Salt City. So we have definitely some salty personalities, but that's because we used to have large salt deposits
right
within and outside the city.
Well, point being taken is New Yorkers, I find, whether you're from Syracuse or from Manhattan or wherever, you guys all tend to have like a really unique sense of humor, which, some people can't always take, especially in this politically correct, day and age. And so
I don't even know if it's a New Yorker thing. Like, guys just like to make fun of each other.
Right, yeah.
That's what we do. Like, I got a group text for guys from high school. We rip on each other all day long. What was that? Was that your version of Mr. Burns? Mr. Burns does this and you do this. What was that? I saw that, Sam. I'm watching you with my peripheral.
I was trying to comb back my hair with my knuckles, but yeah, it didn't quite work out. But
that should be your meme of like that's your excellent. That's your Mr. Burns like this.
Yeah. So yeah, but no, I agree. I mean, I have a group chat with guys that I go back to high school with too, and we all shit talk each other regularly.
Yeah, that's all. That's all it was.
It's like that scene from I don't know if you've seen the movie Gran Torino, but it's like that scene in the barber shop where Clint Eastwood goes in there and he and the barber are calling each other all sorts of racial epithets and.
Well, yeah, that's the thing about, like, they talk about barbershop culture. Now, I stopped going to a barbershop after about the age of 14, and as you can tell, I cut my own hair. So I didn't really have the barbershop environment because I didn't like how my last barber was cutting my hair because he was drunk all the time. He used to come out of the back room with this cup of coffee, and I didn't know any better. And then eventually, when I was like, I don't know, 13 or 14, a friend of mine who also went to Pete the barber, said, when he goes to that back room, he's drinking, right? I go, no. He goes, just watch. So the next time I went there, I saw him carrying that cup, and then I smelled it, and I thought, oh my gosh, no wonder he's always missing hairs and all this. So I started cutting my own hair. But I will relate in the barbershop. I was actually just watching that recently, and Cedric the Entertainer was ripping on all kinds of black culture. He goes, there's 3 things that we need to be honest about. And it was a funny bit. So I understand, like, that's what guys do. When guys are around guys, you rip on each other, and normally it's a fun thing. So
yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, I think most guys in real life, tend to keep that up. But Hollywood, and the so-called czars of pop culture. Everything is so PC these days, in Hollywood and whatnot, that, you can't even crack a joke or anything without someone being offended these days.
Well, I think that's why guys like Bill Burr are doing so well, because he literally just gives the other side of the coin, and people love him. In fact, one of my favorite interviews to watch is when Bill Burr is on Conan O'Brien. It's hilarious because Bill Burr will just defend like Justin Bieber, or he defended Trump in 2015. Then later on, he kind of backed off. He said Hillary goes to those Bilderberg meetings back then. And it was just like, it's funny because he's actually giving you the other side of it, which is fun. But, Hollywood likes him, I believe, because when he said he was done with Christianity, and he just said, and on the fourth day when this and that, and he let it go, then Hollywood embraced him because he said, all right, I'm done with the God stuff, which I think that's why they embraced him. They go, all right, you can be our right-wing guy as long as, and I'm not saying he's right-wing, he's just logical.
Right.
But once he gave up God in his bit, because he used to say, like, I just think that my God's better than your God, talking about Jesus versus Muhammad. And then he took off. And now he's like the biggest comic going, you know? So
yeah, I don't quite understand that. I mean, I know that you and I are both Christians, and that's something I would personally never do. I wouldn't, I would never personally, forsake the Lord, for my comedy career.
Well, I'm not even saying he's doing that. It's just that was part of his bit one time.
Right.
And I noticed, and I'm not a big Bill Burr fan or anything. I mean, I watch him now. I don't like the word fan short for fanatic. So, like,
right.
I watch him, and I like his specials. But I just noticed that, I don't know if it's 2014 or whenever it was, when he basically let that go, part of his bit. He's just, every special he comes out with is huge, and he's got like a cartoon out now, and the guy's crushing it. So it's like, all right, so Hollywood will accept you as long as you accept one of their pillars of belief, and one is atheism. Another one would be the whole gender dysphoria is not a real thing, and you get it. There's certain pillars that Hollywood will accept you, and you have to accept at least one of them, and normally you have to accept all of them, or be super talented in other areas.
Right, in the case of Clint Eastwood, he's just super talented. Also, the fact that he's just been around for so long, that's the other thing is people ask, well, how come Clint Eastwood or Sylvester Stallone get away with being conservative in Hollywood? And the answer is because they've been there for so long.
Right. Right. Yeah, I can see that. Definitely Clint Eastwood, but like you look at someone like Mel Gibson, right? There was nobody that was bigger than Mel Gibson, and we all know what he said that one time or whatever. And then he had a couple other like drunken voicemails or whatever, and it basically crushed his career. Now he's rebuilt it since then. And I don't know if you've seen Hacksaw Ridge, that latest movie that he did. Incredible portrayal of a hero, and he said it wasn't even based on a true story. He said it was a true story. He actually took stuff out of the movie because he thought it would be too unbelievable from the guy's story. So you look at a guy like that, he'll never be the same Mel Gibson, but now he's just taking more of a directorial role, and he's crushing it that way. I mean, he was as big as you can be, and then he made Passion of the Christ. Right? And right after that, notice, what happened. And I've heard some interesting theories on that, which I don't want to share for this. This is your podcast, but
feel free. This is kind of just an open forum. So
cool. So what this one theory I heard was, this was on Coast to Coast Radio. I don't know if you ever listen to Coast to Coast.
Yeah,
but I used to.
Sometimes.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, they talk about anything. When I was in college, one of the jobs I had was I was delivering papers in the middle of the night. And to get me through the night, I was listening to these different radio shows, and this one Coast to Coast, they were talking about how they're like, don't you find it interesting that after he made Passion of the Christ, then he came out and like said all these things about the Jewish people, and then said out some other things. And this guy's belief is Mel Gibson has been attacked by demons. And I know it sounds crazy. I realize that, but just an interesting perspective, because Mel Gibson played it perfectly up until that point.
Yeah, I mean that certainly is an interesting perspective. And when you get into the whole Coast to Coast / Infowars / Alex Jones, I mean you hear all sorts of crazy, some of which at first, it all seems like a meme, but after a while, you start to think, well, is the water really turning the frogs gay? So. That's
like, I think that's what Alex Jones does on purpose is, and I think Cenk Uygur actually made a good point of this when he was on Joe Rogan's show, is that he could be right about 75% of the stuff, but if he puts 25% out gay frog stuff, it makes you then discount the other 75%.
Right.
And it's a great tool to utilize to gain an audience, but then you lose all your credibility in the same light. So you got to be really careful about the hills that you choose to stand on, like that and Sandy Hook and certain things. And that's why I was talking about Tower 7 earlier, because I said, like something happens there, and I still haven't had someone explain it to me. And just this morning, someone was explaining. They go, "Oh no, there's a fire chief on record for saying pull it to take down that building in Tower 7." And I'm not trying to go 9/11 on you, but yeah, like there's a reason a building fell that nothing hit. And as soon as you say that, they paint you as a crazy war prepper or a doomsday prepper and all this stuff. But there's some things that we don't understand publicly. Yeah. But apparently there's a PBS article about some fire chief saying to pull that building, Tower 7. I don't know. Now that I've really thrown this thing off the rails.
Well, even a few weeks ago, I had a guest on. We were talking about the whole thing with Syria that just happened, and how a lot of stuff. And I think you covered this on your show, NeeTV, which you can go find over on YouTube as well. About how a lot of stuff in Syria with the whole gas attack, how a lot of that doesn't make.
It just doesn't make sense to me. Why would Assad doing that, knowing that the whole world's watching? It just, militarily, it makes no sense for him to gas his own people. I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it the first time that it happened, and I don't believe it now. I believe that the people got gassed. I just don't believe Assad was behind it.
Right,
and whenever I see the media like something that Trump did, I'm immediately skeptical of it, because the media likes controversy. When there's a riot going on, they get the cameras right there and they zoom in the lenses to get the worst shot possible to make people look bad every single time. So they like divisiveness, they like wars, they like all that stuff. So as soon as they're like, wow, Trump did something good here, I go, okay, and I don't trust it.
Yeah,
my gut tells me not to.
Yeah, the fact that like 90% of the time they so adamantly hate on Trump, and then 10% of the time, or no, less than that, 5% of the time when they praise him, that always gets really suspicious to me.
Yeah.
Yes. And yeah, speaking of celebrities and going against the media, I don't know if you've talked at this much on your show, but what do you think of the whole Kanye West thing? I know that you like hip hop and rap and R&B, so that seems to go into, let's go into your territory more. What do you think of this whole Kanye West?
Well, I think Ben Shapiro said it best. Like, this is Kanye being Kanye. He's always gone against the grain. This is nothing new. The only new thing about this is he's literally saying, hey, blacks, you don't have to be Democrats. It's like, thank you. Like, literally, yeah. I don't know if you've heard his new song with T.I., but you can hear them going back and forth. It's really interesting to hear them going back and forth, because those are the conversations, believe it or not, happen all the time.
Yeah.
A couple of months ago, I got invited to 100 Black Men Meet. And, they extended olive branch out to your brother over here on the Irish side of town now. Mm-hmm. And I went to the meeting, and literally all of the middle-aged and older black men think the exact same way I do. I start off the meeting by saying, I believe that it's a man's job to provide, and it's a woman's job to take care of the home, which is obviously, a controversial statement today. And all of the middle-aged and older black men in this meeting all agreed with me, except for the two that were running the meeting, and they were trying to say, well, gender is a social construct, and we're all going, no, it's not. No, it's not. That's propaganda from your guys' side, the left. And all the older black men in there are extremely conservative. That's the thing, is that from my experience, black people tend to be very Christian, at least in this country, and they don't believe in things like abortion and gay marriage and high taxes. They don't believe in a lot of that. So that's the whole, like, the I don't know if dichotomy is the right word, but there's this, like, you have two different forces going at the heart and the mind in black culture, which bothers me, because the mind is saying, I should be voting for lower taxes and for things like, the life of somebody being sacred. But, my heart says that that's not the right thing to do. And that's why I blame the media for brainwashing people with propaganda.
Yeah, there's that whole, there's that quote. I actually read this fairly recently. It's an old quote from LBJ, and a lot of people have tried to kind of sweep this under the rug and deny that he ever said this, but shortly after JFK was assassinated, and once LBJ, became president, I guess he once said to an advisor, in 50 years, we'll have all these niggers, pardon my language, voting Democrat. And
right.
So,
and it was witnessed by 2 people.
Yeah. And so that's what the quote unquote great society that he was building was really all about. It was about getting, black people on welfare. And,
some people call it the urban plantation.
Right, yeah. And, so, I agree with you. And I listened to that Kanye West song too, and I'm like, holy crap, this is brilliant. I've heard all that before, but, the problem is when you have people like, Herman Cain or Colin Powell, because there are conservative, black people in the spotlight, but the problem is they're all politicians. And, young people,
right,
more often than not, are not going to, be tuning in to hear what Colin Powell or Herman Cain.
Well, even like a guy like Immortal Technique, who I believe is a flat earther. I could be wrong on that. You'd have to fact check me. But he went on Alex Jones' show like years ago, and he's very urban culture, non-politician guy. So there are some that are out there, and that's why like Candace Parker's important. But you look at a guy like Ben Carson, who literally came out of left field. I hadn't heard about him, and I didn't even know. I think we covered him one day on my show, that there was a movie made about Ben Carson. That the guy that played radio, what was his name? He was a Show Me the Money guy.
Oh, it's Cuba Gooding Jr.
Cuba Gooding Jr. played Ben Carson in a movie in like 2008 or something like that.
Yeah,
had no idea.
What was weird was I actually saw that movie before I even knew what who Ben Carson was. It was something like I was flipping on Netflix one day and it was on there, and I'm like,
yeah, I didn't even know that it existed. I found it out just researching him one day, like live on my show, and it was really interesting. And look what the media did to him. Now this guy literally is maybe the greatest brain surgeon in this country. He works in children pediatrics, and I actually have a testimony from somebody that I can't even mention their name, and he said that when there was somebody that they couldn't work on in their hospital, they would airlift the child over to his hospital, which I believe was Johns Hopkins. Correct me if I'm wrong. They would airlift the kid over to their hospital so that he could work on him. And this guy was doing God's work for years and years and years. And then he announces he wants to run for president. And what did the media do? They attacked him. They made him look crazy. And Trump attacked him too, based on that story about him trying to stab his mom. And we weren't there, and that's why I don't judge him for that. And they tried to make him look crazy and stupid. And it's like, his intellect is higher than anybody else that ever talks about him. Because even for me to talk about him, his intellect's, like the guy's IQ's got to be off the charts higher than everybody.
Yeah.
And they try to call him stupid and crazy. And that's what they do. And where was the black support for a black man that literally had the single mom experience and went from zero to the smartest guy on the planet? And nobody supported him. And he even, at one point, I believe it was in September, October of 2015, he was ahead of Trump at the polls at one point.
Yeah. Well, he also got in trouble because he said that he made some comment about like
the temples.
Like, no, it was something about like gay prison rape or something like that.
I didn't hear that one. See, the couple things I heard was him stabbing his mom's story, which I still hear people go, yeah, like he's kind of crazy. It's like, he was 15, he made a really bad decision. Like, everyone judges people as if, not everyone, many people judge people as if they've never made a mistake before. Like, yeah, of course, that's an awful, awful thing. We don't know what he was going through. So I'm not going to sit here and try to judge him for it, you know. But as far as the only other thing I heard about it was that he said something about the temple storing grain or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it was all really minute stuff, especially, you know,
Exactly.
especially compared to what Trump was saying, you know, or what came out later. I mean, I am still honestly amazed that Trump got elected with some of the stuff that, you know, came out about him.
I bet on it, and I won. For years I called myself a conservative Democrat, and even in 2014 I wrote an article called "A Disgruntled Conservative Democrat," and I actually wrote it for a local politician here that was pretty middle of the road when it came to Democrats. He was in the top 10 of Democrats that voted with Republicans. So I thought, okay, if a guy's willing to do that and go against his party, then he's trying to seek the truth. So that's all I needed. That to me proved that, all right, this is a good man. And I wrote an article about it because I felt like I had nobody to vote for, and I was basically on the fence. Well, when I saw Trump, I go, he can beat Hillary. I thought he'd be the only candidate that could possibly lose to Bernie Sanders because they both have the same honest appeal. And I thought he would lose to Bernie because that would be like, yeah, they both have the same kind of appeal. Even though Bernie's an outright communist, people are stupid and they vote with their hearts, not their heads. But I thought Trump would beat her because he would just outpunch her because he doesn't worry about that, where everyone else would feel bad about verbally punching on a woman. And you can't even say that phrase. I kind of feel bad about saying it like that. But he didn't feel bad about it. It was like he could beat her, where Ted Cruz doesn't have the likability more so than a Hillary. And literally, I have a book called, I'm still trying to finish it. It's called Unlikable or Likable about Hillary Clinton. And it's funny in this book, literally. So apparently the Spielbergs are good friends with the Clintons. And there's a story in this book about how they're teaching Hillary how to act. And they're like, because Bill Clinton was likable. Whether you agree with it or not, Bill Clinton, he was smooth and he was likable. Hillary was smart, but not likable at all. So they're literally working with her, and they would have study groups of watching her tape and saying things like, oh, here's where people don't trust you, here's where they like you, here's where they don't. And she couldn't watch the tape. She was like, I'm not watching this. And literally, Steven Spielberg had people training her in how to act because they knew that you have to put on a likable image like Barack Obama did. And I got to find that book. If I find that book, I'll let you know. It's a good one.
There was a clip that I saw. I can't remember where I was. I think I was in a hotel room somewhere with my mom, and we were watching the news or something, and it was at the beginning of the campaign, so early 2016, I think, and there was footage of Hillary Clinton, and it's at a rally, and she's going down the line, shaking hands, and she comes to this black woman who looks like a middle-aged black mom, and she shakes her hand, but she doesn't make eye contact with her at all, and she's looking down the line, so she shakes this black woman's hand, but she doesn't make eye contact with her, and my mom caught that and immediately said, oh my God, that's proof as to how racist she really is, that she won't even make eye contact.
I don't know. That could be a stretch, though. Like, if you got a bunch of people in front of you and you're just shaking hands, like, I could see how that could happen. I'd have to see the full clip. Like, was she making eye contact with everybody, and as soon as there was a black person, she turned her face? Then maybe I could say that. But.
Well, that's kind of how, because at first I kind of made the same comment, but then I guess she rewound on the TiVo, and it was one of those things. I mean, it was...
Well, you guys have TiVo? You guys have TiVo? I haven't heard of anyone mention TiVo since like 2008.
It was like at this hotel in New York something like that. No, we don't even have cable where we're at now. We just
I don't have cable. Yeah, I got rid of cable. It's a waste. Hey, the tip for the people out there watching: get rid of your cable. It's a waste of money. You can get an HD antenna, and as long as you're not out in the boonies, you can get. I get like 20 stations, and I bet out in the boonies you probably even get more because there's less interference.
Yeah, same here. We just got a digital antenna too, and then we got a bigger pipe for the internet, and so we just stream everything on Netflix and Amazon Prime, and then of course there's tons of stuff on YouTube. So although I guess YouTube now has like this option where you can basically stream cable TV. I haven't tried it out yet, but that's what I've heard.
I haven't tried it. So. I haven't tried that yet. I did string TV for a week when the Mets were in the playoffs. I go watch a Mets game. They gave you like a 7-day trial to try it out. There's plenty of options out there to stream the internet. You don't need cable. I know so many people now that have gotten rid of cable, and they said they're so glad because of the hundreds of dollars you spend on it, and you watch the same, 5 stations.
Well, and it's all advertising too, and then again, 90% of the ads for TV are all drug companies too. Most of them.
So obvious. When you say that, it reminds me of when one of the best interviews, most entertaining interviews, is when Alex Jones was on Piers Morgan, CNN, because he just goes in full Alex Jones character. And one of the things he mentioned was the pharmaceutical companies. And he goes, I'm trying to get people off these suicide pills. And then he goes, oh, see, you don't like that, because Piers Morgan interrupts him and starts changing the subject. And, man, I could watch that right now. That's one of the greatest, most entertaining interviews I've ever seen in my life. In fact, when he was on Joe Rogan, he was on for 4 or 5 hours or whatever it was. I've listened to that 2 times, which is 10 hours I've listened to that. It's so entertaining. I couldn't stop. I was like, this is so, whether you agree with Alex Jones or not, the guy is entertaining. So just, strap in and enjoy.
Yeah, well.
And these last couple of years, since 2015, Trump has made this whole thing entertaining. So whether you like him or not, you know that you're entertained because you're getting more comedy out of our politics than you are in our actual comedy.
Yeah, that's the funny thing too. Well, and I mean, you were just speaking about Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, I never really paid much attention to him until about like a year and a half ago or so. But I mean, he is also freaking entertaining too, especially when he gets Joey Diaz on his podcasts too. So there's
I don't listen to a lot of Rogan, but like when there's somebody on there that I recognize, I pop in. And sometimes I should just watch some random ones too, because a lot of times I start liking someone based off of seeing them on Rogan. But I don't know when I first started listening to him. I think I would just see a couple of interviews that I liked. And when Alex Jones was on there, I shared that to so many people. I was like, you gotta if you start listening to this, you'll never be able to turn it off.
Yeah.
It was just so good. It was so good.
Well, Rogan is how I discovered Owen Benjamin, and then subsequently The Unbearables and you guys.
Oh, cool, right. Well, I bet a lot of people discovered him that way. Yeah, right.
And it was mainly because I guess on that interview, Kurt Metzger, the other comedian, was just talking over Owen 90% of the time. So Owen never really got a chance to speak. So I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to have to check out this other guy who, didn't really get to say much. And,
yeah, that was an interesting one. Yes. And I saw someone in the comments on that video said, like, Joe Rogan tried to school Owen the same way that Rogan schooled that guy that was a former fighter. You've probably seen those clips. And it didn't work. And Owen just, stuck to his guns. So I gave him props for that. And then that other guy started talking. I'll tell you, I was watching it actually in the bathtub. Enjoying a nice bath like I do. And I was watching it, and as soon as Owen stopped, I saw the other guy. I was like, all right, I'm done. And then I checked the comments, and I saw people were like, yeah, like he only talked in the first 20 minutes of the show, and then he didn't. I was like, all right, so then I didn't miss anything.
No, you really didn't. So, I mean, that was kind of what prompted me to go, okay, well, I'm gonna check out this other guy who didn't get a chance to speak. And
why did they bring on that other guy with Owen? I don't get why that other guy was even there.
I don't get it either. I think it was something like they were supposed to record on different days, but the other guy like forgot, so he just showed up a day early, and Joe just let him in. I don't know. I don't know if that's what happened, but that's what I heard. So,
Gotcha.
But anyway, so how did you discover Owen and the Unbearables and?
So you're breaking up a little bit. You said, how did I get to know about Owen and the Unbearables, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
So I actually saw Owen at the Funny Bone in 2014, and it was ironic. I've said this story a couple times on my show. Basically, so in my past life, I was a banker, but I also was a DJ, and I still DJ now. And my DJ persona, part of my branding was I'd wear suspenders and a bow tie. That was like my cape if I'm Batman, right? That was my branding. So when people would see the suspenders, they'd recognize me. And then when people would be out and about and I'd be at a bar, they'd say, "Oh, you gotta go see this DJ with the suspenders." And it was a trademarking thing. So I reserve a table just on a random night at Funny Bone, and I get like 6 of my friends to come out, and we're sitting right in the front. And I'm sitting at the head table with my suspenders and bow tie on. And Owen says one of those like in-between jokes that some people laugh and some people don't. And I laughed and nobody else did. And he looked over right at me and he goes, "You like that over there?" And he goes, because the lights are on him, he goes, "What are you wearing, suspenders?" And he goes in on me wearing suspenders for at least 10 minutes. And he's ripping on me. And I'm dying laughing. My whole table's dying laughing. And he goes, so what do you do for a living, sir? I was like, "I'm a banker." And he goes, "Oh, forget those guys, right?" And like the whole place is like against me at this point. I'm like, "Oh boy, here we go." And he goes, "What bank do you work for?" And under my breath, I go, "Chase." And this girl behind me goes, "He works for Chase." And I thought, yes, because I actually worked for M&T Bank at the time. And I was just trying to throw him off. And it worked. And so he just starts going in on the Freedom card, the Sapphire card, and how much Chase sucks, and he's ripping on it, and I'm dying laughing. And my table's dying laughing now because they're like, "Damn, Neri, you found a way to get out of this, like, the light's on you, but he's not even making fun of your job right now." Because I thought, man, if someone recognized me from M&T, like, and this thing goes viral, our stock price could go down, or it could go up. And literally, not too long before this, M&T had just had some money laundering from one teller to one drug dealer at one branch in Baltimore. And because of that, it became a news story. And the stock price, like, dropped. So, like, I was really sensitive about the stock price dropping because that's all it takes, one person to mess up.
Right.
And it can really, like, cost people millions and millions of dollars. And so I got him off topic, and he's calling me the Monopoly guy. And he was making fun of this other guy that had a big beard, and he was calling him something from Duck Dynasty. Well, during the show, this girl starts heckling him, and Owen was only supposed to play for 45 minutes, but people kept sending him up drinks, so he ends up going for 2 hours. This girl starts heckling him, and he goes back at the girl, and then she got emotional, and the security had to pull her out, and he goes, "You see?" He goes, "Me and 2 guys," this is kind of ties our conversation full circle from earlier. He goes, he goes, "The Monopoly and Duck Dynasty," he goes, "We're going to be best friends after this." He goes, "You can't make fun of a woman because they get too emotional." And everybody's laughing. And after the show, I told him that I was like, "Hey, I got a confession." I go, "I actually work for M&T Bank, not Chase." And he goes, "Oh, I should have known." It was a cool moment. I bought his album, and then it was cool. So I've been following him on Instagram ever since. And when I've been following Crowder, I would say, since one of his rants. I think maybe when he started doing the Cenk impression. I think I found Crowder when actually I looked up the differences between Jesus and Muhammad, and Crowder had some viral videos out there, and I think that's how I first found him. And Crowder had on Owen, and I thought, holy cow, I've been following this guy since 2014, and this guy leans right, because he wouldn't be on Crowder's show if he didn't, unless he was going to debate him. And I'm like, oh, and he's talking about trans kids at the time. I was like, oh, shoot. So then I start, following him on Twitter and YouTube and everything else after that point, and I was like, oh, let me see what this guy's doing. I saw his Why Didn't They Laugh podcast. And I really liked what he was doing. I like a lot of the things that he stands for. And I think he's become more right-wing than he realized he was as he starts, opening his eyes to a lot of things, because he wasn't a right-wing guy in Hollywood. He just was, middle of the road, like a lot of guys are.
Yeah,
And
well,
when you're making a lot of money, you don't want to know what's behind that closet, because if you open it up, it's really hard to close it and sleep at night. So he's opened it and he's jumped right in, and he's probably sleeping great now, but he's not making the money he used to make in Hollywood. That's people sell out
right.
for that stuff.
Well, it was funny because when I went back recently and checked out like his Comedy Central specials or whatever, his jokes were all like relationship based,
Right.
comedy. And so I'm like we went from like plain vanilla, Joe relationship comedy. Not that that's, easy to do or anything like that. I don't mean plain as in boring, but he was pretty neutral. So we went from that, to all of a sudden he's a quote unquote alt-right comedian, which basically, I mean, that term is supposed to, represent like neo-Nazis, but now the left uses that term so much that it basically means anyone who is not left now.
Yeah, I mean, you're breaking up a little bit, but the relationship thing, I heard you mention that, and it's what's funny is a lot of people. So shout out to Brian Askew. He's got a good YouTube channel. I don't know if he can still live stream right now, but he's a good guy, and he was saying recently to me, he said, he was like, honestly, he was like, one of my favorite things I like about Owen is when he talks about relationships. He was like, like he's a good comedian and all that. He was like, but I love when he talks about relationships. He was like, that's what makes me tune in. And I think that's how a lot of young men or middle-aged men or whatever tune in, because the relationship jokes that Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, Owen Benjamin, Bill Burr, they're all the same jokes. They're all the same jokes because men tend to be a certain way and women tend to be a certain way. And that's why those relationship jokes always work, and they're timeless, because people at the core of it are very similar. If they're men and women are pretty similar, there's definitely, I would say, more of a variation with women than men from my experience. But that's where we relate, and that's why relationship humor will probably always be the best kind of humor, because it's not a political thing. When you start making a joke about the right, then you lose the left audience. When you make a joke about the left, you lose the right audience. So like guys like Bill Burr, he would make fun of Trump and then Hillary, and then he could dance on that line. But if you make a relationship joke, typically you can get both sides to laugh.
Right.
So I get that appeal, and I think that's his strength. And when him and Amy do relationship shows, I think they're some of the best shows, because you get to see his counterpart, which is that whole yin and yang. Just like when I do a show with Domi, like, people love it. Just, Domi doesn't like being on the camera, and I understand that. That's not her cup of tea, which is why I love it. She's my counter. She balances me out. Or else who knows what I would be doing to get attention.
We don't even want to go down that road. So that seems like it could be a bit dangerous. Well, how'd you get into YouTube live streaming anyway? Because like I said, you're one of the top ones, I think.
Oh yeah, I'm not a top one. I gotta build up that audience a little more, but I appreciate that. I've been wanting to do a YouTube thing for a long time, and I used to do one back in 2016, which is why I got these sunglasses. And now I don't sell them anymore. But if you go on Syracuse.com and get yourself a legal protection plan, I'm happy to FedEx you a pair wherever you are within the U.S. 50 continental states. Is it continental, or am I using the wrong word? Or 4 provinces. Just go on Syracuse.com, select a protection plan, and find one that works best for you. But in other news, one day I just started live streaming. I was having a few drinks, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to live stream. And I don't know if Shaniqua had been following me or if I was following her, but she saw me say something to Owen on Twitter, I would say probably in December. And the irony is Bayonetta Bob told me to put a bear in my logo. So I did that. And Shaniqua came to my show and was like asking me a bunch of questions on my first episode. I think she was trying to feel me out. he was trying to fill me out, or whatever Shaniqua O'Teal likes to go by nowadays. And it was cool. It was a really cool show. I still want to know who Shaniqua is. I think I know. I just can't say it on the air. And yeah, since then I've been trying to do a show every Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on my channel. Just look up my name, John Neri, and my channel should come up. That's JOHNNERI. And on the weekends, I still try to do a 7 o'clock show. Sometimes on Sunday I can't. But I still try to do an hour show every day. But Monday to Friday, I'm pretty consistent, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right to 8 a.m. And then Island Bear takes off from there.
Yeah, you are, and it's a really good stream. Especially since you talk everything on that show. Well, maybe not.
Talk what? What'd you say?
Well, maybe not everything. I said you talk pretty much basically about everything on that show, or close to.
Yeah, I try to keep it pretty open. I read my audience as they're chatting, and through the trolls, if I see a good comment, I'll try to read it live. And yeah, I like to keep it topical. For a while, I did a lot of political commentary, which I get. But once you talk about all the issues, like, what do I want? Keep talking about abortion and the Second Amendment all the time?
Right.
I don't. I'm a pro-life guy. I believe in the Second Amendment. I don't want to keep talking about it all the time. Now, sometimes there's certain news I like talking about, but I would rather talk about issues. Yesterday, my show was about group dynamics. Today, my show was about feeling good being in war, like meaning that you're going to experience some pain,
right,
or being at peace and feeling like you're living in injustice. So there's another dynamic. I love having shows where I have like a different dynamic, and I try to talk both sides just to understand.
Yeah, and I mean I've done something similar with this show, because when I first started out, I was pretty strictly political too, and then after the election, I just got burned out. So when I relaunched my podcast, I started doing more topical stuff too, and it was interesting because when I joined the Bears, which was in April, I showed Cannabear my podcast, and he said, you remind me of this guy from Syracuse, New York, John Neri, or Neri.
Oh, that's cool. Shout out to Cannabear. Cannabear's doing great thing. Cannabear's connected so many people to the Unbearable that it's really an awesome thing. Well, and I hope he's doing well with his new gig he's got going on. Actually, looks like he makes some great dinners.
Yeah,
saw some pictures there, Canna.
The story goes, I don't know how much of this you can confirm, but he claims that you're one of the reasons why he and his girlfriend, the lovely Amethyst Bear, are together.
Excuse me, I'm not one of the reasons. I am the reason that they are together. And the reason I am the reason is because I thought Canna was a chick, and I thought Chuck was single. So I tried to hook up Chuck with Canna. Because why would your name be Canna and be a man? I said, if your name's Canna Bear, then that would tell me you're a woman bear. Your name should be like Cannid Bear, with like ending in a D, not an A. So I tried hooking them up. I even put out a Twitter poll, like something about what should Canna and Chuck do. I don't know what it was, but it got some good traction. Someone live on my show said, you realize that Canna is a boy, right? And I go, nope, didn't know that. And then I saw a little tension between Amethyst and Cannabear. And so then Cannabear on my show started singing to Amethyst. He started playing. Cannabear, he jumps on my show, he puts on some shades, and then he started singing all these Barry White songs to Amethyst, and boom, before you know it, they're just a match made in NeeTV.
I love that story. So yeah, well, and then I saw one of the stream highlights where you're busting his chops. Like, have you two talked to each other? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I said I wouldn't stop until they DM'd each other. And I go, you probably already have been DMing each other. I go, yeah, you already have. You already have. And then somebody said something that they already did. And I go, there you go. A match made in I don't know what I said, but basically, I could see that there was some potential there. I saw them flirting back and forth. I saw it.
Yeah, I keep telling him, I'm like, you need to get your butt here to America. Stop wasting time in Canada. And of course, he's working right now, trying to get his stuff to come over.
Honestly, it's not easy to get into U.S. or Canada. I
No.
lived in Canada for a number of years, and there's only a couple ways to get into Canada. Either A, you go to school there, you get married to somebody there, or you're in a certain profession that they need. So I'm assuming it's probably similar getting into the U.S. So he either marry her or come over here, finish your schooling. I don't know where he is in his schooling. He might already finish, but there's only a few options there, Canna. So get your butt to the U.S., go marry your woman, start making some kids, and then take it from there.
Mm-hmm. So
why don't you talk about those two women that you had fighting over the other day, Sam? Yeah, see? Yeah, see, I see you laughing.
Did you actually watch that stream in its entirety, or did you fast?
I watched enough. I watched enough to know what was going on that day.
Well, they were fighting over me, but then one of them confessed that she was I went to the restroom real quick, came back, she's talking with her friend about how she's been, and I've heard this, and she began talking to her friend about how she was cheating with her current boyfriend with some guys that she met on Snapchat or Tinder, and some like.
Oh yeah. That was the other part. I forgot about that. Right.
And so, with that in mind, I'm like, hold up. So you mean to tell me that you're interested in me, but that you're cheating on your boyfriend with some random guys from Snapchat? Well, I don't see what the big problem is.
Yeah, she's just trying to have a good time. She ain't worried about relationships. She's just gonna get pregnant one day, be miserable the rest of her life.
Yeah,
and that's how that one's gonna end.
Yeah, and I'm not. I told her. I said, this is how bad I've become from listening to your streams. I said your boy doesn't play like that.
I love it.
So I said, I said I had a nice time with you, but I think that's that, and
that's good. That's good, Sam. That means all your stuff down there still works. I don't know. Sometimes I don't know. Yeah, so, that's good. That's a good thing. Yeah, so you're blessed. You're blessed, actually. You're blessed.
Yeah, I am. So well, and it was funny because Amy in that stream when I was telling that story, Amethyst was like, yeah, good on you. They were sluts. Right. So
yeah, you're right. Well, I would say most women. Here we go. I'd say most women in college are not most. 49% of women in college are sluts, and the other 51% there's a bell curve of the other 51%.
Yeah. Well, the big problem is, and I hate to always bring this back. I always hate to bring up this point because, women hate when I bring this up, but it's true. Feminism has really done more. This third wave feminism has really done more to hurt women than men.
Oh, of course it has. Of course it has. But don't get me wrong. Let me say it the other side too. Like 99% of men are sluts in college too.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I thought about it after I said it. I thought, oh, I'm going to sound like a male chauvinist. No, like, trust me, like, I see the other side too. It's just that men are givers and women are takers, sexually speaking. Mm-hmm. So, women, you guys got to deal with all the issues. Men can give diseases and not even experience some of it. Now, I'm not saying go do that. Never mind. We ain't going to get into my personal history. Here's what I will say. Love God with all your heart, mind, and body and spirit, so that you can love others as you love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to love everyone. What can I say? I tried to love them all. It's very hard to do so.
Get yourself a good woman, and as Owen says, use your dick and your vagina and make babies. So,
Amen. Amen. That's what it's designed for.
Yep.
That's what it's designed for.
So, yeah. Sorry, Milo. As much as you might try, it's not gonna work if you and your husband try and do it. And I love Milo Yiannopoulos too, by the way. But
well, the whole gay marriage thing here. I mean, like, here's what I'll say on that. Like,
yeah.
I get, like, everything I do doesn't mean I'm open to children. Every single thing I do,
Right.
And I get that. Then that makes me a hypocrite. I don't see, the way I see this is, I confronted one of those guys, those guys that hold the sign saying, gays are going to hell and stuff. And so I'm talking to him one day. I'm talking to this guy for like 10, 15 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, but like, you don't know you're not the judge, so you don't know who's going to hell. You don't know who isn't. And he said, honestly, at the end of the conversation, he says to me, he goes, honestly, I don't see it as any different than masturbation. He goes, it's just for pleasure. I go, oh, well, that's reasonable. Like, he said a reasonable thing when I pushed him far enough. And that's why what I like about the role model of Jesus is he counterpunched people into being reasonable. And then he told parables so people could understand, or at least try to understand, the Father God. And that's what I liked about, that's why I like questioning people, because I like to question them until we get to a chord of reason. And once you get to that reason, when you separate all the emotion out of it, people tend to agree at the reason. Now, right. I tend to be a person that believes, and here's the difference, I think, between the right and the left, is I believe you're a product more so of the decisions you make than your environment. I think you're a product of both, but more the decisions you make than your environment. And the left believes you're more a product of your environment than the decisions you make.
I mean, your environment certainly has something to do with your upbringing.
If you got two parents, you've got two good parents at home, you're definitely more likely to do well than if you got a single mom. But it doesn't mean that someone in a single mom has to make the decisions to make their life harder.
Right. I mean, we were talking about Ben Carson. That's a perfect case in point. He grew up in a...
But it's harder for Ben Carson than someone like me. So I that's where I'll say it's like, yeah, like, he definitely didn't have the same privileges I did of having two parents. But that has nothing to do with being white or black. That has to do with the privileges having two parents at home or one parent at home. That's and it shouldn't be a privilege. Like, that's just what it should be. You should have two parents at home, and if you don't, then hopefully your parents still work together to raise you. Now, that's when you don't have that, then you're disadvantaged. Right. And that's the difference. A disadvantage doesn't mean the other person has privilege. It means that the other person has a disadvantage, so now they got to work that much harder to overcome their disadvantage. But what I've noticed in my life is the people that are the most disadvantaged tend to do the best at the end of the day. If you look at you got your disadvantages, you overcome them, and you got more YouTube views than anybody I know, personally. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I look at someone like George Washington, the British Army or whatever, they wouldn't take George Washington as a general, so he became the greatest general of all time. Michael Jordan got cut from his high school team, and I just watched his Hall of Fame speech recently, and some people said it was petty, but as I'm listening to it, I'm like, no, he's just showing you his competitive spirit, and he always looked at somebody as a competitor, and that's what I hope all men do, because it makes us all better at the end of the day. Godfrey Legacy in order.
Yeah,
I didn't say what that meant, but sorry, go ahead.
No, that was actually a perfect segue. So, what is Godfrey and Legacy about? Because a lot of the bears have been asking about what that means, and I was like, you know what? I'll ask him when I interview him. I mean, I know is that a rip on Michael Savage's Borders language and culture? Is that what?
No, not at all. Honestly, it was something that took me almost a year to figure out, like, what do I care about? So after I left the Bank of America, so when I went from M&T, I went to Bank of America, and I had a good job at Bank of America, and I left a really good paying job without anything in mind. And I realized I'd lost my purpose, and I had to figure out my purpose again. And in studying not just the Bible, but the Quran, and like spending literally days on YouTube, days researching things, or just enjoying myself and watching video game stuff, I realized there's a few things that I care about. One of them is I care about what I leave to other people. And I was like, I want to have kids someday. I want to make an impression on this world. But I don't want to sacrifice every word that I say and be worried about every single thing I say or do. Obviously, I care about my freedom. Part of my issue was with Bank of America is they didn't want me to have a YouTube channel. They found out about, and long story short, is they basically didn't like that the VP of Small Business in Syracuse had a personality on YouTube that was giving relationship advice. They're like, that's not what, business bankers do, which I understand. I was their employee. And the reason that God comes first is this was my struggle. So last year, I didn't know who God was. I totally lost, vision of him. I thought I'm supposed to become a priest, and then I felt further away from God. And the more I was going to Catholic Church, the more space I felt between me and God, to be completely honest. And I'm not saying Catholic Church is bad. I'm just saying my personal experience. I saw the political realm of the local bishop in Syracuse speaking politically, and it tarnished the whole notion of the Catholic Church to me. So I was reading Grant Cardone's book, and he was talking about how leaving a legacy means that you're not being selfish. He said, a legacy is for everybody else. A legacy isn't for you because you can't take it with you. He said, so if your goal is to just get a good job, make a lot of money so that you can retire on your own money and spend it all until you die, he goes, that to me is selfish because you're not thinking of anyone else but yourself and your retirement. He goes, a legacy is for everybody else. And I always say I'm the happiest guy in the room if I got a Bills game on and Miller High Life in the fridge, but I can't pass that down to people. I can pass down maybe some memories watching games with kids, but at the end of the day, that can only take you so far. So what I realized in reading just a little bit of Grant Cardone is that we are different than the birds in the tree. If I look at a bird, a lot of people say, a bird's free because it can fly wherever it wants to go, But if a bird has free will, then why are they still in their only invention in a nest, regurgitating their food to their young? That doesn't make sense to me. That means that they don't know how to take an idea, give it to somebody else, and make that idea bigger, better, and the third. Like, since human beings have invented fire, we've invented the wheel, and boats, and buildings, and skyscrapers, and internet, and everything in between. We can take a device this big and communicate like we are around the world. So, clearly there's something that separates us from the birds. We have something that we want to leave to other people, and whether it's an idea, a concept, or an actual physical, tangible thing, that's legacy. We are different from the birds, but you can't have free will without God. That's where we get our consciousness from. So in that search of trying to find my mantra, I realized this is what every philosopher and every person throughout history has gone through, is like trying to understand what's your purpose. And I realized that I have to maintain these three things to remind myself of my purpose. I can't do any of this without God. God gave me the consciousness, the spirit, the ability to be here today. So with that, his gift to me was free will, which I would then interpret to say consciousness. So with that consciousness, if my goal isn't to leave a legacy to other people, then I'm being selfish. So that's why I believe in God, freedom, legacy in that order. Really, you can't have one without the others, or else I'm watching the squirrel run up and down the thing, and this squirrel's only job is to store up enough food to make it through the next winter and to repopulate. And if your goal is just to merely survive and populate, you're no different than a bird on a branch regurgitating its food to its young. So your goal should be to leave something to somebody else. So.
Amen. Yeah, I think you know I think that's a brilliant analogy. Actually, you know, once you mentioned it, it reminds me of something that Dennis Prager, he had a interesting thing on his radio show about what separates man from the animals, and it is in fact.
Who was saying this? I heard I missed who you said who was saying this on the radio.
Dennis Prager, the guy who runs.
Yep. Yeah, Dennis Prager. Yep.
Who runs PragerU? Extremely brilliant man. He a few years ago, I heard him. He had this talk on what separates man from the animals, and I mean, I could go into it's like a whole 3-hour long conversation, but legacy and the ability to pass things on to others was one of the key things that he mentioned about how we can, about how we can pass things on and improve the world around us, or contrarily destroy.
Sure.
If you want to be negative about it, that's part of the legacy too. It might not be a good legacy per se, but it's still a legacy.
No, 100%. 100%.
All right. Well,
and before you sign off, I did want to just shout out part of the reason that I was able to understand these things in myself is I've struggled throughout my life with manic depression. I didn't know what caused it. And I've been listening to Michael Savage on and off for years. And Michael Savage's last book is God, Faith, and Reason, which also, I haven't read it yet, but it also inspired me because to see a guy that's been talking politics for 20 years get fed up with it, where he's like, I want him to do a God book. And this is a guy that's not religious.
Right.
And I don't like the word religion because religion basically puts reason on the back burner and says, accept this because it's a structure of beliefs. I don't believe in accepting a structure of beliefs. I believe in trying to figure out what the truth is. Right. And I called into a show and I told him about how I struggled with manic depression. And in talking to him, I said to him, which Canterbury clipped so brilliantly, so I appreciate Canterbury for doing that for me. He clipped the segment where I call into the show, and I said, here's what I struggle with, and people that I've talked to told me, yeah, you're manic depressive or bipolar. And he said, well, it was funny as he said, it sounds to me like you have some bear in you. And I go, oh, it's funny at the time. I said, I call myself the bipolar bear. And he laughed, which for me, hearing him laugh was a good thing. And he goes, no, I said, but if I've psychoanalyzed myself, what I realize is when I lose my freedom, I spiral because I don't like losing my freedom. And Michael Savage, who I've looked up to for years, says, oh my gosh, he goes, I have a freedom reflex. He goes, if I, go against my freedom, I spiral too. Something to that effect. And I went, wow. He goes, yeah. He goes, just listen to more talk radio. You'll be fine. He goes and basically was saying, don't suppress your freedom. And I thought, wow, like that's so powerful. It was just, it inspired me. And I that's what I'm trying to do with NeeTV. I'm trying to inspire other people to trying to figure out whatever your gift is. But I'm trying to teach people that if you can keep God first and knowing that his gift to you is free will and your free will should be to enhance your talents and everything else, then you'll naturally be leaving a legacy to other people. So that's the whole goal of NeeTV. It doesn't always come out that way, and we do a little freestyle session in there from time to time, and we try to have fun.
Yeah, I mean, kind of latching on to what you were saying. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, I'm the same. I'm the same way. I think anyone who how do I say this? Anyone who hasn't really been conditioned, quote unquote, to be a cog, gets depressed when they're
so true.
When
I love that.
When their free will gets taken away. Well, that's one of the brilliant things of and Owen Benjamin has talked about this too. Pink Floyd's The Wall. That whole album is about someone who gets his free will taken away. So he builds this wall, around him, and then, gets sick of it and destroys the wall, quote unquote, to find his free will.
Right. Well, that's where I got to give Owen credit. Like, Owen inspired me when he was doing his show, and I thought, wow, like, here's a guy. When I say I looked up to Owen, like, not like Michael Savage, I've been listening to for a long, long time, but seeing Owen come out as a conservative, at least in many views I would consider are important, it was inspiring to me because he basically left the money of Hollywood for truth. And to me, that was inspiring, and I thought, wow, like, if he can do it, like, I can too. And that's why I do support him in a lot of ways. And in conjunction with him and Michael Savage, like, it just clicked for me, and I thought, I got to do this show, and now I'm over 100 episodes in, and people actually look forward to it. Not many, it gets, some views, but it doesn't matter if just like a couple people look forward to it. And now I feel like I have a duty to do that show now, and I enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of the similar thing with me. How I started my show. When I started my first podcast, which was 10 years ago. Now I was 13, 14 years old around there, and I was one of those weird kids who really got into history and really got into politics at a young age. Those were the subjects that I really excelled at. I sucked at math and still do somewhat, and but I was pretty good with writing, and I was really good with history and politics. So around the time of the 2008 election, when I started, when Obama really came into the conscience of America, I looked at his voting record and saw that as a junior senator from Illinois, he basically hadn't taken any positions whatsoever.
Right. And so, smart. It was very smart. That's what you do if you're ever on Apprentice.
Yeah.
Whatever your project manager wants to do, just go against it. Because if your project manager wins, you don't go to the boardroom. But if your project manager loses, you can say, see, I was against him. I told him not to do it. And that's what Obama did on the political stages. He just was against everything. And then he can say, see, didn't work out, and I told him not to do it. He learned from Trump a long time ago.
Yeah, but what happened was I went in, and the problem with Obama was he had no, it wasn't just that he went against everything. It was that on a lot of stuff as a senator, he didn't even vote on anything. He was absent for a lot of those sessions. So I started asking, so what does this guy really stand for? Because he hasn't voted for anything. And just because I asked that, I got called, a racist, a sexist,
he knew that.
All the buzzwords. And so I was like, there's no Rush Limbaugh for millennials.
Amen. Yeah.
There's no.
Well, there is now, and his name's Ben Shapiro. But back in 2008, we didn't know who Ben Shapiro was. At least on a large scale, he still was doing well, but we didn't know who he was till about 2012, I'd say.
So I was like, well, screw it. If there's no millennial Ben Shapiro or no millennial Rush Limbaugh, then I will.
That's awesome, bro. That's awesome. That's really cool.
So I started a podcast, and lo and behold, all of these other millennial conservatives, like Charlie Kirk, the guy who runs Turning Point, he started coming out of the. So all of these millennial conservatives, like Crowder, started coming out of the woodwork, and
they're following you. They're following you, Sam. You tell them.
Well, and people have asked me, so how come you're not like uber famous yet if you've been doing this for so long? And that's the other thing. Fame is overrated, I think.
Well, I have an answer for that. You might not like it, but it's just because you're not as entertaining as they are. What you're saying is no different than what they're saying. They're just more entertaining vehicles of that information. That's the only difference, bro.
Well, it might be that. It might also be that they've had better marketing resources and more money to throw behind their vehicles too. I just.
Oh, that's true, dude. That's totally true. That's true too. But like when you're Crowder, like Crowder's funny. You know what I mean? Like he's very entertaining. He's engaging. So all he needed was the right person to see him do something, and then Fox News hires him. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So that's a lot of it. Like honestly, like you should be. If I were you, I would be trying to be a writer on Crowder's show or Shapiro's show. Like I would want to be a writer because you have all the information, man.
Right.
Especially if you've been saying this stuff since 2008. Like you're ahead of me.
Well, I mean, and I'm amassing an audience slowly but surely. That's the other thing. It doesn't. Everyone kind of has their own niche audiences. People who like Crowder might not necessarily like Rush Limbaugh, vice versa. So there.
Crowder still did a video recently where he was Bob Ross painting with blood Muhammad. So like he still has no shame where it's concerned in a lot of aspects to get views. I don't see you doing stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, no, I'm more of a talker. I haven't done a whole lot of on the street interviews. At least not recently.
So. I think you should. I think it'd be a great idea.
No. What I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping that Antifa or one of those groups comes around my campus, and then I'll just go and disrupt them and ask them a whole bunch of questions. That's what
what year are you?
What year am I?
Yeah.
Right now I'm at a community college. So I'm in my third year there, and then I'm transferring to the University of South Florida here. So
nice. Well, yeah, I know South Florida. Yeah, they're I believe South Florida was in the Big East with. Or wait, were they in the East? What conference South Florida? And I don't remember. But
I can't remember right now.
That's okay. So are you trying to get a bachelor's, master's? What are you working towards?
I'm actually looking at getting a certification in technical writing. So I guess that would be a bachelor's.
Cool.
So
cool. As long as you know what you're going to school for. I made the mistake of just trying to get a degree in communications without knowing what I wanted to do, and then I just took sales jobs. So it was just like it's a plaque on my wall.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean anything to me.
Well,
it shows the hard work that I did to get that, but at the end of the day, like I could be doing what I'm doing without ever having to go to school.
Right. Well, I think also depends on what your passion is. Like, podcasting and streaming and media, like that's my passion. So
right.
I want to turn this into a business, and fortunately because of, platforms like Patreon and whatnot, there are finally avenues where people can start to make money. Unless you say something like super controversial, in which case Patreon will boot you off, I guess. But
dude, you're gonna have a big show. I would say in the next 2 years you're gonna have a really good sized show because you got the work ethic. You obviously now you've probably had a fan base for a while, but now like you have a little bit of an engine behind you in the Unbearables.
Yeah,
so it'll be good, bro.
Well, that's the other thing. I've also noticed, and you might encounter this too at some point. Your fan base changes somewhat too. I used to have a bigger fan base before Trump happened.
Interesting.
What happened was, I was part of a publication. I'm not gonna mention their name, but I was part of a publication that basically wrote for it was one of these college conservative blogs, and so I published pieces on there, And I was gaining a pretty good following over there. And then the website, in about June of 2016, they decided to basically take a never Trump stance. They were part of that whole were part of that whole sect of conservatives, and I basically said to them, they said, well, you can either stay with us and toe the never Trump line, or we can basically dismiss you. And I said, well, first of all, this is antithetical to everything that conservatives and the free speech movement stand for. I said, how is this conservative? You're basically saying toe the line, or
or it's a very leftist tactic.
I said that's a leftist tactic. I said I don't know. I said, if any of you have actually read my columns, I'm not one of these people who is saying that Trump is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Obviously, the guy has issues, but you can't tell me that he's worse than Hillary Clinton, who, for all we know, has murdered people, and done a whole bunch of other crazy shit along the way.
I still don't know a single thing Hillary Clinton did that was good, ever.
No.
I still don't know a single one, and people I would ask people, I go, what has she done well? Like, name me something she's done well. And then, when they couldn't give you a clear answer, that's how you know you've won. Like, if they would say, well, what's Trump done well? I'd be like, I don't know, hired thousands of people, like, formed thousands of businesses around the world, inspired millions of people. Like, what has Hillary done? And they go, well, she had some good policies about that. No. As soon as the more people talk, the less they say. Remember that line. The more people talk, the less they say. So when you ask somebody a question, if they can't give you an answer, that means that they don't have the answer, and they're searching for it in their words. Like I just was now. But I figured it out by the end.
Well, the other thing that I would always ask Hillary supporters, and maybe this is just a generational thing, but I've tended to notice, like, with a lot of the 20-something Hillary supporters, most of whom were women, I would ask them, so why should I vote for Hillary Clinton? Make your case. Oh, it's time for a woman president.
Yeah, bullshit. Sorry, my language. That's just
yeah. No, you're free to say whatever on here. But no, I would ask them in return. Okay, so then if you were so gung ho for a female president, then why weren't you supporting Sarah Palin when she ran for a brief time back in 2012?
Or Carly Fiorina that ran on the right, recently.
Well, because Hillary Clinton has experience, and it was like, no, she was first lady back in the 90s to a president who cheated on her repeatedly, and whereas with me, people would ask, so why are you voting for Trump? Well, because he's an entrepreneur. He's proven that he knows how to get business deals done. He's not politically correct. He doesn't really care about what people say about him. He just does his own.
But there's answers there. There wasn't one good answer to vote for Hillary other than, well, Bill Clinton had a good economy when he was president. It's like, okay, fine. And we can discuss the reasons that might have been the case.
Right.
But also, we lost a lot of jobs right after the 90s. I don't know if people remember all the jobs we lost since NAFTA and all that stuff. But then you're getting in the weeds. The left doesn't want to talk about the weeds. They just want to talk about, the economy was doing well. It's like, okay, but Bill's not running. So for the same reasons that when we corner you on Bill Clinton not being a morally good guy, and you try to say how Donald Trump's not morally good, and they go, well, he's not running, then you can't use Bill Clinton in the same light and say, well, the economy and everything was going well in the 90s when he was in office. But the left doesn't care about being a hypocrite. That's the whole point. Is the left, they don't care about hypocrisy. They only care about appealing to people's emotions, and we have to stop talking logic to emotions. And here's what I like what Ben Shapiro said in one of his speeches. They said, they know that you're evil. They don't think you're evil. They know you're evil. So their whole thing is to say, you're evil, go in your corner, in your right-wing corner. That's why they're so quick to say right-wing, but they never say left-wing. You know? So, and then they'll even make statements to say that, well, this is the right thing. Very rarely do you hear me say this is the right answer, unless I know for sure. But they're coming from emotion, so everything to them is, well, this is the issue of the woman, and this is the issue. Well, that's not right for. They don't know anything. So stop talking logic to emotion and start calling them hypocrites and cowards for the stances that they take, and attack their heart, because clearly socialism is evil. We've seen the effects of it. So just call them for what they are. A communist, socialist, it's all evil. So call them for what they are, and that's how you bully a bully. I like what Shapiro said in that. So
yeah,
I love it.
That's I don't know if you're real familiar with Andrew Breitbart, who was Ben Shapiro's predecessor, but he was the one who really got me activated to continue what I was doing. There was a point in high school where I was kind of like, the show's not doing too well, so I think I'm gonna quit. And then Breitbart, right before he died, he went up on CPAC and basically, made a call to action for everyone to get on social media and start being citizen journalists and being citizen.
I didn't see that until like a year or so ago, so I really like that. That was awesome.
I play that all the time because that was my big aha moment, or I guess my big call to action. And then 6 weeks later he passed away, and it's still and I still find it tragic, but that final speech of his was just such a call to action to fight back against the left with their own techniques, to call them out on their own hypocrisy. And one of the rules for radicals is to make your enemy live up to their own set of rules. So, and I think that's what we've started doing as a whole. Is they want to call us, racist or bigots, and we can find examples of bigotry on their side now, and more often than not, we have. So
yeah, the Me Too movement was mostly with leftists. It's mostly all Hollywood, which leans left. Newsflash,
right?
And a lot of politicians, and I think there was probably more politicians that were left. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I don't know that, but definitely Hollywood was, mostly left when they started putting them out, and there was a couple of right winger politicians that were in that group.
Yeah, and I know that people were disappointed when they said that they were going to cancel House of Cards because of the whole Kevin Spacey thing. But I was actually, I guess they're coming back for one more season. But no, I'm glad that they, got rid of Kevin Spacey. He's a piece of crap if he's, molesting kids like that. And and believe me, there are still some movies of his that I love to watch. He's a talented actor, but he's a scumbag.
Well, let's be honest. Acting is overrated. It's the most overrated profession, and the way that people claim that they're these unbelievable people, it's like, John Stamos was a doctor on ER. It's like, he was pretending to be a doctor. How come you don't care about actual doctors that much, that actually do the work that he pretended to do? They're playing pretend. They're just pretending to be characters. I put a different character on for this show right now. I don't talk like this all the time, but sometimes I put on characters because it's fun. It's It's so overrated. You're just pretending to be somebody and read some lines, and half of them don't even read them. They get them fed to them right before they go on. So it's so overrated. That whole industry's so overrated. I'm just sick of the praise of all of these wannabe idols, and they're
Yeah.
not. So I'm done with them. I'm done with them. Leonardo DiCaprio, I've turned in my handkerchief from his Great Gatsby. I'm done. I don't care about it. I just, that's why when people say, have you seen this movie? Most of the time I haven't. Because unless I've been called to watch something like The Jerk, I'm not going to watch it, which I'm finishing today. I got about a half hour left. Actually, I do got to get going though. I got to call at 2:00. I got to get ready for.
Okay. Well, we'll
Holy cow, we've been going for 1 hour 45 almost, huh?
yeah. So we'll wrap this up fairly quick. But yeah, to just to make your point. I mean, yeah, I agree with you. Acting is severely overrated. I mean, the only actor that I can think of that I really admire anymore is Keanu Reeves from The Matrix, and it's
Well, I think Denzel Washington's the greatest actor of all time, and the guy's right wing. Go listen to some of his speeches. The guy's right wing. He just can't come out right wing, or else he loses his career.
well,
So his legacy is ahead of his freedom. So I look at everything through that prism. Where do people put their priorities? Do they put their legacy ahead of their freedom? And I would say most people do. Most people,
yeah,
they're working a job and they go, you can't be free, and that's the struggle. I get that, but
yeah,
as long as God's first, you'll be good.
yeah. All right, John. Where can the good people find you on social media
Oh,
and all the
yeah.
other
The,
places?
the best way to find me, I would say, would be either on Twitter or YouTube. So my Twitter is John Neri CNY. That's JohnNeriCNY for Central New York. Or you could go to YouTube and just look up my name, John Neri, or youtube.com/John Neri. And those are probably the top two places to find me. If you want to say something to me, you can comment to me on Twitter or DM me or whatever. If you're able to, follow me on there. And the other side, like I said, would be just go on YouTube and comment something in one of the comments of my videos, and you can do it there. That's another good way. But yeah, and that's my actual name too, so pretty easy to find at this point.
All right, John. Well, thank you for the conversation, brother, and it was great talking to you, man.
Hey, you too. You're gonna be one of the best. Like I say, it's what, so by 2020, which is ironic because that's perfect vision, right? So by
Mm-hmm.
2020, you will be the perfect vision of the future, Sam.
Thank you. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Whitfield Report. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll be right back to do the outro. So, God, freedom, and legacy in that order.
That's right. Thanks, Sam.
All right.
Peace, brother.
Thanks, John. Wow, that was intense, ladies and gentlemen, if I do say so myself. I'm back alive in the past, present, future hour. And that interview was about an hour and 37 minutes. And we talked beforehand, before we started rolling the interview on Tuesday. So for me personally, the interview was at like an hour and 45 minutes. And we were BSing a little bit before the interview. But anyway, again, I really love John Neri, and I think that is the first show I've done, certainly with the Whitfield Report. I think my other podcast, my old podcast, the Whitfield Analysis, I think I had one that was maybe like 2 hours exactly on the mark, but this one was pretty close to like my longest interview. So for the purposes of the Whitfield Report, which I've had for about a year and a half now, congratulations, you just made it through my longest interview to date so far. And but man, it was a good conversation that we had. And once again, you can check out John Neri and follow him on Twitter at John Neri CNY, and also search for him on YouTube. Again, NeeTV is live every weekday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. and it only runs an hour, mostly, so. And before we sign out, folks, just a couple quick announcements for those of you who missed the beginning intro of the show. As I mentioned before, I'm going to be posting some more stuff on Patreon. So you can go to patreon.com/Whitfield and subscribe for just $1 minimum and support the show. Every dollar we get really helps out. And as I mentioned before, I'm looking into other alternatives because I know that some people don't like Patreon, and so I am looking for alternatives for the people who would like to support the show but don't want to rely on Patreon. But we will still be using Patreon for the vast majority of stuff. And also, you can now find the Auto Podcast in addition to Apple Podcasts and Google Play and all those platforms. You can also find me now on Stitcher, the Stitcher web radio app. I got some requests to list my podcast on there, so we're on there. As always, you can find a complete listing of the Auto Podcast and all the platforms that I'm on over on anchor.fm/Whitfield Report. And with that, folks, I think we're all good. So, folks, I want to thank you for tuning in to the Whitfield Report. Have a great rest of your weekend. It's Mother's Day coming up, so be good to your mother tomorrow, and be good to your mother every day, but especially tomorrow since it's Mother's Day. And from all of us here at NGC Studios, have a great night and a good rest of your weekend. God bless. God save this great nation, and I'll see you next weekend, ladies and gentlemen. From NGC TV Studios, I'm Sam Whitfield, signing off. God bless. God free legacy, in that order.